With technological advancement, there's been a move to use technology in the field of training, with it in many cases superseding traditional methods. This essay shall discuss the respective merits of using technology in training and the drawbacks to the development of its superseding traditional methods. One advantage of using online methods is that it promotes the possibility of distance learning, as trainees can participate in the same instructional activities regardless of their physical location, and in some cases regardless of the time available, as online methods which don't require communication with a trainer can be completed by the trainee at any point. Cook and Dupras, 2010. Distance learning also permits the possibility of economies of scale. Once a web-based learning tutorial has been developed, there is no limit to the amount of people who can view it. For instance, in medical training, different schools can share resources and thus avoid redundancy in developing course materials. Fall et al., 2005. Individual components of a course, for example a paragraph of text, an animation or a video clip, can be indexed and made available for use in other courses with reusable learning objects. Candler and Andrews, 1999. It should be noted that this economy of scale is not available for online training methods, which require a person to be continuously involved in the training, e.g. an online discussion forum, where the more people contributing to the forum, the more time that is required in work from trainers, providing the forum to be involved in. It should also be noted that these potential economies of scale are potentially offset by the large upfront costs associated with developing web-based learning. The development of an effective online tutorial can be very expensive, ranging from thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars when time and opportunity costs are accounted for. CAP, 2017. Also, ongoing time commitments to an online discussion group can be significant. Nafu, 2005. Bello, 2005. Web-based learning offers the promise of individualized learning. Clark, 2002. Learners struggling to learn a topic can pursue remedial work. Those interested in learning more can do so, and those already familiar with the topic can move quickly to the next. Another way to individualize instruction involves adaptive instruction, in which the computer uses information about the learner to alter and thus optimize the learning experience. Brzezinski, 1998. Chen and Paul, 2003. Adaptation has been suggested in response to various individual differences, including baseline knowledge of the subject matter, motivation, attitudes towards computers, and learning and cognitive styles. Cook, 2005. Further to this, individualized learning is that using traditional methods, e.g. having people together to watch a lecture, the content has to be delivered in the same way to everyone, as they are all together. If the provider wants to avoid this, they will need to use more resources, as they require trainees to be divided into separate groups. This means that different learning styles cannot be as easily utilised, whilst with IT, these different learning styles can be tailored to. Although it could be argued that the learning styles approach is in itself flawed, and there is a risk of IT methods being used for people to only learn according to one domain that their training experience is based on. Web-based learning facilitates several instructional methods that would be infeasible or at least difficult in traditional settings. For example, virtual patient simulators can present medical students with a wide variety of patients and medical contexts to supplement classroom learning. This provides the opportunity to experience uncommon scenarios, facilitates the repetition, deliberate practice, Erickson 2004, and temporal spacing, distributed practice, required for enduring learning, and allows communication of detailed, performance-based feedback. Other learning exercises such as interactive models and games, or using the internet to search for and assimilate information from multiple sources can engage learners. Multimedia, colour, sound, video, photographics, graphics, and animations can enrich a course in ways that would be difficult, if not impossible, using a textbook. The asynchronous nature of many online discussion groups allows time to think deeply about the issues at hand and spend time constructing a thoughtful response. This is in contrast to a face-to-face setting, where the conversation may move on before a learner has had the time to grasp the concepts, let alone formulate a question or comment. Cook, 2007. Barotitis, And Polyman-Ku, 2009, found that reactions of employees in a Greek bank towards e-learning courses were quite positive. Requests for access were continually increasing, and direct and indirect training costs were reduced. Moreover, the absence of employees from the position was decreased too, due to e-learning, alongside an internal survey conducted in the end of 2003, which revealed the significant usability of existing e-learning courses. Nielsen, 2000. However, research shows that many, perhaps most, web-based learning courses have an inferior instructional design. Allure, 2002. Merrill, 2006. A classic example is the textbook on the web, publishing the text of an existing syllabus or book on the internet and calling it a course. Such courses offer little, if any, advantage over the previous format, while incurring many disadvantages. An employee must take initiative and must have the necessary computer or internet skills to log on to a web-based learning lesson. Web-based learning would become useless if employees are not motivated and or not well trained to use it. Trombley and Lee, 2002. Despite one of the advantages of the IT approach being suggested as the way it can respond effectively to individual differences, it may be that this is more of a theoretical vision of what is possible with IT, as opposed to the practical reality that is achieved. In practice, because of the de-individualized nature of, for example, web-based learning, there can be a failure to respond to a learner's individual needs. Whereas a good teacher can monitor the group and adapt instructions to accommodate various learning needs, adaptive web-based learning interventions must be explicitly programmed to monitor, recognize, and respond appropriately to individual needs. This issue of tutoring experience being lost can, though, be challenged with intelligent tutoring systems. This aims to take the place of a tutor by assessing the levels of competence, give feedback that is visual and or verbal. Feedback is hierarchically structured, and there's more sophisticated programs that build on a history of students' learning and assess which modules would be most appropriate at which time. And an example of this is the Generalized Intelligent Framework for Tutoring. This is an educational software designed for creation of computer-based tutoring systems and was developed by the US Army Research Laboratory from 2009 to 2011. GIFT was released for commercial use in 2012. It's an open source and domain dependent and can be downloaded online for free. The software allows an instructor to design a tutoring program that can cover various disciplines for adjustments to existing courses. It includes coursework tools intended for use by researchers, instructional designers, instructors and students. Goldberg, 2014. GIFT is compatible with other teaching materials, and we're including PowerPoint presentations, which can be integrated into the program. Goldberg, 2014. A meta-analysis by Kulik in 2016 suggested that intelligent tutoring systems can exceed the effectiveness of both computer-aided instruction and human tutors, although the limitations are that it is costly to develop these systems. The challenge, though, for intelligent tutoring systems is to try and develop in the ways which it is currently not capable, particularly around understanding the effect of trainees. So they are more able to more effectively adapt instructions effectively. Indeed, some current researchers focus on modelling the nature and effects of various social cues commonly employed within a dialogue by human tutors and tutees in order to build trust and rapport. Zhao, 2014. One type of training using this approach is embedded training, which is training commonly used in the US military as training provided by capabilities built into or added onto operational systems, subsystems or equipment to enhance and maintain the skill proficiency of personnel. This uses on-the-spot correction, so eliminates the implementation gap. Transfer training increases because the practice is applied in the real world and is more affordable than standalone training, as it does not require time away from the job, and training can be given with or without the trainer present. There are, though, limitations with the approach, as it may interfere with normal operations, and there are questions on if the operational system can cope, and what are the costs of making sure it meets the needs of all system users. Embedded training is therefore useful, as Littlejohn in 2006 states, because it moves away from learning from beforehand and moves towards learning through doing at work, as learning takes place at the moment of task execution. It is, though, only possible through this utilisation of technology as traditional training methods are unlikely to be able to produce a manner of providing this on-the-spot correction. However, Littlejohn does stress how embedded learning should not be used as a substitute for formal learning, as both types of training provide difficult but critical roles in transfer of training. Upon organisations' decision to adopt new technology, individuals' perceptions and attitudes affect the success of the initiative. Leonard Burton and Deschamps, 1988. This was demonstrated by Park and Wentling in 2007, who assessed the factors association with transfer of training from e-learning by looking at one set of learners who completed a soft skills e-learning course and one set who completed a hard skills e-learning course. The results demonstrated that learners' computer attitudes impact their perception of the usability of the e-learning courses, and that this perception influences the degree of their transfer of training. The results imply that when learners come to an e-learning class with positive attitudes towards computers, they feel the e-learning course system to be more satisfactory and efficient, and accordingly they can get a better transfer when they have learned to job performance. I would argue that this, as the measure of transfer, merely relies on their perception of it. Further studies should give more attention to the multifaceted measures of the actual transfer. These studies suggest the importance of employees being on board for IT-based training to be effective. It is important because it can mean that if they are not on board, then the training will not have a positive effect. This provides justification for the meta-analysis of web-based training and classroom-based instruction by Sisman et al. In 2006, which found that students were equally satisfied with both types of training, as it shows the value of this equal satisfaction. This study also demonstrated that both types were equally effective for learning procedural knowledge. However, it was found that web-based training was more effective at teaching declarative knowledge and more effective for longer courses where learners had control, where learners needed to practice skills and could get feedback at the time and was related to age. These results, alongside the debate illustrated so far, demonstrate how deciding between the value of using technology in training versus not using it in training is not a simple question, and that in reality an approach which considers the utilisation of both, a so-called blended approach, may have value. And there is meta-analytic evidence for this notion. Bernard et al. In 2004 completed a meta-analysis of 318 different studies, comparing face-to-face learning with electronic distance learning. The results were used to produce a histogram of effect sizes on the differences between the two learning types. An effect size of over 0.5 means that one delivery mode was considerably more effective, and an effect size of 0.7 was more indicative of quite a large advantage. The majority of differences were small. However, in some cases the instructor-led version was more effective than the digital version and vice versa. This will be likely because in some experiments the lessons were not equivalent, namely that there will have been some poorly designed classroom sessions as well as e-learning courses that failed to use the features of the technology that would best support learning. This suggests that it is not the technology per se that causes learning, but rather how that technology is used to support basic learning processes. In 2010, the US Department of Education reported an updated meta-analysis comparing traditional and IT training. The report summarises experimental comparisons of learning among pure face-to-face instructor-led training, pure internet-based online training, and blends of both. The study concludes that in recent experimental and quasi-experimental studies contrasting blends of online and face-to-face instruction with conventional face-to-face class, blended learning has been more effective. When used by itself, online learning appears to be as effective as conventional classroom instruction, but not more so. And Oakes and Green in 2003 found that return on investment is maximised when using a blended learning approach. This does suggest the real value of using a blended approach. However, it should be noted that a lot of the research literature which suggests a lack of effectiveness for IT in terms of being more useful than traditional teaching methods are based on older technology. And with technological advancement, there is the potential for the benefits of technology to be more pronounced. Gamification is one means of this. Gamification is a newer means of training which utilises technology. The gamification approach whereby game-based learning can take place. This can be through drill or practice-style games where there is a focus on trial and error as the primary way to learn and is considered the motivation for players to keep on trying. Prensky, 2001. Although there is criticism of this approach, in that all it encourages are the development of specific skills which may actually be irrelevant to the job that the individual is employed in. This could though be challenged, of course, for a more embedded training style approach, where it is actual workplace tasks that are being used in this competitive manner of trying to get things right and getting a score for this. Although this does also raise ethical issues in terms of people being continuously rated on their job performance, which could raise stress levels, and indeed if it potentially trivialises important work tasks. Another approach used in gaming is to use role-play style games, where people perform job-related tasks and receive consequences and rewards accordingly. Except because it takes place in a virtual world, it eliminates any of the concerns that would happen through acting this out in the real world, e.g. embarrassment at making wrong decisions in front of colleagues, or a lack of realism through knowing that your colleague is acting. Gamification also provides the opportunity to meet the needs of different learning styles, Becker, 2007, as the game can be played in different ways. This may help address the problems presented by a lack of individual tailoring from other online methods, as the learner can easily tailor the experience for themselves. Pivok and Pivok in 2009 created a real-life roleplay to teach design students at a university level and subsequently turned it into a digital game by using an e-learning roleplay platform. The scenario was fantasy and the platform provided rules, controls, multiple forms of communication and feedback for both players and moderators. Although not an immersive three-dimensional virtual world, visual and auditory stimuli were provided via video and podcasts. Other scenarios tested involved cultural awareness training by role-playing alien races from competing planets, and project management competence via business wars. Participant feedback suggested a high level of immersion and repeated engagement with the scenario, resulting in a high level of learned competencies. There are different beliefs as to if, how, why, and when learning takes place while playing games. Awareness in 2007 argues that it is purely the context in which they are used that simulates any learning to take place. Yet Garris et al. In 2002 argue that learning occurs only after reflection and debriefing, and the game characteristics and instructional content are paramount in allowing this to happen. Schaefer in 2006 partially agrees, and states that the virtual world created by such games allows players to take action within the game and then reflect on this action, both during and after play. Salin and Zimmerman in 2003 concluded that unless the correct game or situation is chosen for the selected topic, the desired learning outcome, be it skill-based, knowledge-based or affective, they will not be achieved. Other studies also suggest that an appropriate level of moderation and debriefing by the teacher is required to reinforce the learning outcome with the learners. Pivok and Pivok, 2008. And there are other criticisms of gamification. For instance, it needs to be noted that when an organisation develops a training process, it needs to neatly fit into the delivery stage of the training cycle. That is, that it needs to be able to follow from the training needs analysis and be evaluated effectively. Gamification provides a particular challenge from following on from the training needs analysis, as the analysis shall yield what exactly employees need to be trained in, and the logical delivery that comes from this may not match to an already existing game. The options then are either to develop a new game entirely for this purpose, which is cost prohibitive and lacks any empirical evidence for its effectiveness, use an existing game which is similar but not an exact match to the training needs, which means the training is going to be less effective than desired, or do not use gamification at all. In addition, there is an issue with regards to attitudes towards gaming in terms of games being viewed as a device for fun and not a device for learning. Therefore, games are less likely to be taken seriously by those playing them as a learning aid, meaning people are both less likely to want to play them, and should they play them, less likely to reflect on what they are learning and how to approach work differently on the basis of these reflections. It should be noted, though, that in the future there is the possibility for these issues to be reduced as more games are developed that have more evidence for their effectiveness solving the first issue, and attitudes towards the value of gaming change. However, at the current moment, these issues do exist.